Guys, thank you for having me. I wish I was there in person, like you guys too, I'm sure, but it's lovely to see you nonetheless. And thank you very much, Mr. Nadaraja, for that lovely, wonderful story. It's fantastic to see what's going on. So,
now,
guys, I just want, yes?
Can you make it a full screen? It's, yeah, correct.
Yeah,
okay,
here we go.
Right.
Here we go. So, guys, so the title of my talk this evening is Behavior that Benefits Others and the Choices that we make and Why They Matter. And that's really something I want to explore in a bit more detail through the context of that which I'm most familiar with, which is through the work of your own wonderful charity and supported in partnership with Assist RR UK, Assist Resettlement and Renaissance. So that's where I'll structure my talk around. If I just hark back at a little bit of history for those of you who are less aware, my first engagement with, I guess, the Sri Lankan issues and problems that needed a lot of support was back in 2009 when Dr. Sarveshwaran, as you can see in the middle of the screen just there, who was a parent of in our parent school community at the time, and his son Viknesh was a pupil of mine. So we had a non-uniform day, and I became aware through the news in any case, but Save the Children were running a camp for orphaned children in the Vonia district. So we did some fundraising, and that was my first real engagement with the Sri Lankan Troubles. And it continued and pressed from there. So Dr. Sarveswaran formed with some other Tamil diaspora Assist RR in 2012. And then really, I guess that started a path on a professional and a personal basis for myself and many others in my family and our school. And it ran into quite a lot of things over the years. And I think if we look, there's a lot to absorb on that screen, so don't feel you have to absorb it all at one go. But I guess the headlines are that one way or the other, between Tamil diaspora who supported some of the projects that we had going on, our school community, our family and our friends, the net gain was in excess of £125,000 since we started in 2014, and about £50,000 indirectly, plus lots of other volunteering. So it's been quite a journey on a professional and a personal front, but it's been an enormous privilege, and there's so much I've gained from it. And now what we're trying to do as a school is to make sure that we have lots of other children who are invested at a young age so that they will do similar work to the kind of things that you guys are doing as they grow older. So if we look ahead, part of that journey was my family and I went to Sri Lanka first with Assist RR, and we traveled pretty much the length and breadth of the north and east, exclusively looking only at Assist RR and IMHO projects. And that was a real eye-opener for us. It was a very difficult privilege, and I say that kind of candidly, because it's a privilege to see things as raw and undoctored as they are, but it's also quite difficult to see some of the challenges that they have. And we then revisited as a family. You can see my children have grown rather tall since the last visit, and that was most recently in October. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go through. So when we harp back to the title of my my talk, we're looking at behaviors that benefit others. Now, the psychological word, that's part of my background as a psychology major, these are called pro-social behaviors. And you might not be aware of this, but the very fact that any of you who are tuned in this evening are by definition pro-social in nature. So the challenge for me as an educator is, how do we take this idea and how do you get this to stick with young children so that they go on to do the great kind of things that you guys are doing in and around your busy lives, even though you have very, very important jobs in many cases. So this is one of the things that we want all of our children to be involved in. We see that you guys as volunteers, our family, we saw it, that as volunteers, what you do really, really matters and makes a difference, as we just heard from the previous speaker. So let's just have a quick recap from the handbook of psychology and what pro-social behaviors are. Well, there are three things, if we boil it down to something quite succinct and simple. They help. Pro-social behaviors help other people, and they involve a concern continuously for the rights, feelings, and welfare of others. And they also benefit one or more person other than ourselves. So inspired by what we have been engaged with IMHO and Assist RR for a number of years now, I wanted really to help to try to make that stick with young children. So we we came up with this image inspired by what we've seen and what you guys do. So, this is just a kind of a child's view of pro-social behavior. So these little squirrels at the bottom they're called Scuffle and Twitch. They happen to be our school mascots. You can see that Scuffle is wearing the school scarf and his little sister there. But we very much put them at the center of the illustration because we want them to understand that they are part of a world-centric view, that around the margins of what they achieve as young children, as young as they are, they can do amazing things even though they're quite young and quite little. And the surrounding support that they're providing at the fulcrum of this pyramid are made up of all sorts of different characters, just like we would be on a global basis. So what we want to get children to understand, and it's been a huge benefit and bonus to me to have Assist or an IMHO as a context to be able to work with you guys so that we can make these lessons stick with children. We very much want them to be, if you like, pro-social agents so that they can make a real and positive difference in the world as they grow older and just become something that they do. It's habit forming and it's lifelong. It's a lifelong habit. So what we do, so psychologists, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, all pro-social behaviors fall into 4 subcategories, which is why we have these illustrations to help the children see this at helping, sharing, comforting, and cooperating. So I just want to kind of express through some of the different, just a few of the amazing things that I've seen Assist or an IMHO be involved with. The first one I'll take out is helping. So it's important that we take each one in advance. So when we do this with the children, we go into greater depth and we look at the illustrations. So we give them this illustration, for example, because it represents their school characters and they're wearing school uniform. And so our children, thankfully, our school community is a huge proponent. Charitable giving is part of the fabric of the school, and we want to accelerate that and do as much as we possibly can. So they do raise very, very significant amounts of money for a whole number of charities on 3 fronts: local charities, national charities, and international charities, hence the overlap with the work in Sri Lanka. So if we look at the choices that, for example, if we now flip back to Assist or an IMHO partnerships, well, the choices that you guys as supporters made, the supporters of IMHO and the board, critically making important decisions, you decided that you're going to fund 320 semi-permanent shelters, and we went to visit those in October. And here's just one of them, and you can see out the front, this woman who's wearing the green dress on the right hand side has put a porch and a veranda area, and just behind Murali, just behind Henry Amalraj is her sewing machine, and that's partly what she's using her semi-permanent shelter for. And it's a great success story because if you see in this photograph, she looks radiant, she looks positive, she looks very healthy, and she is, because just outside of shot in the previous photograph, her shelter happens to be near this lovely, beautiful, colorful temple, and in the background behind her, you can see, I'll just advance one slide and you can see a bit more. She's made this wonderful little cottage industry of doing saris and scarves and various things, and it's really made her quite prosperous. But the most important thing is the little bit of help from IMHO and Assist RR in relative money terms, $600 or $700, has given her taken her off dependency. She was at one stage a refugee in India and returned as a displaced Tamil, and she is now self-sufficient and thriving. And in fact, her daughter and her son-in-law were moving in to a part of the plot in her garden next to her in a half-built house. So she's doing tremendously well. If we look at the other choices that we have made, this is the deliberate choice made by one individual, Dr. Sarvesh Waran, who is very familiar to many of you. Sarvesh decided he was going to be quite canny and savvy with his finances, and he was going to I'm just checking my time. He was going to pick up 2 phaco machines, which are the machines you need for cataract operations, at a medical auction at a fraction of the cost. And then he had to ship them, deal with the bureaucracy in Sri Lanka, which, as you know, is enough to make anybody bald. And he did a fantastic job. And when we were there, we presented one at Kulmanai base hospital, and another one in Vonia. And then we had the privilege of seeing a cataract surgery that same day. So why does it matter then? So why does the choice that Sarvesh made matter in this context? Well, because so far Assist RR themselves have done about 4,000 cataract surgeries. A few hundred of those were funded by our school. And they really matter because when you get to do, again, the privilege that Donna's just behind shot, that's my wife, we get to chat to these people it's amazing how transformative just that one act of kindness is for approximately about $30. And you just have to spend time with them to realize that you've changed their lives, and they could not be more grateful for it. And it's a wonderful thing to experience. Here's a lovely little story I think that's worth saying. You notice that this guy in the top left, 2016, we happened to be in Mullitivu General Hospital at a previous cataract clinic. I'm talking to him bottom left. Actually, he and his friend are Sinhalese. They were laborers, and we had a long chat at the time. And he wasn't able to work while he was blinded in one eye. And that was reversed with the cataract operation that day, unbeknownst to us. And when we went back this time, and we were in Vonia for this clinic, nearly, 2.5, nearly 3 years later, he recognized our daughter. I think he thinks she's some kind of angel because she's been present on both times. First of all, his right eye, second, his left eye was operated on. And I love the photograph at the bottom because he and his very funny friends who had obviously had a great day out and had their eyes mended, they put on their very best shirts because it was a very big day for them. And of course it was, because guys, you don't need me to explain, that man in the middle in the purple shirt who's had his right eye done and his left eye done would now otherwise be completely blind. And he would lose his income, he would be dependent on other people, and he would have to go and be led around on a stick and lose his dignity. So for the bones of $100, the choices that Dr. Sarvaswaran have made, and the donors and the supporters of the both charities have transformed just this man's lives. The reality is there are tens of thousands of more who need something very, very similar, and I would like to support that. We would like to support that as a family going forward in many other ways. So the choices we make are very important. If we look at the sharing element of the 4 social behaviors, I'm just checking my time. Okay. This is the illustration we use for children, because when we think about them sharing, we again use Scuffle and Twitch so that they're funding and they're sharing what they have, whatever they have, with their friends and family. Well, there's another context for looking at Assist RR and IMHO's work. Well, very recently, you can see again Sarvesh with some supporters and volunteers handing food parcels and sustenance to families at the result of the pandemic because they lost their incomes and they were in lockdown. And their livelihood, like many people unfortunately in the States and the UK currently, just came to a brutal end. And if it wasn't for Assist RR and IMHO, they would have been forgotten. Why does this matter? Well, because 20,000 families have been supported very recently by IMHO and Assist RR, and that's an extraordinary achievement by any measure. And you can see just a snapshot of the photograph. The motorbikes are not owned by the people who got the food. That's the district support workers. Lots of them don't have any shoes. They are desperately poor, and they live in remote areas. And without the support that you've given them, they would really, really have struggled. We happened to be there also on Diwali, and this is a collection of clothes actually that came from diaspora around the UK that happened to be there at the time when we were based in Vonia. So we put them in the back of a truck one day, went deep, deep into the jungle, and we distributed them for no other reason other than why would people not want to have some clothes? And it was Diwali, and it was a nice thing. So they already had their best clothes on, and they were utterly delighted to get even more clothes. You can see there, that's the general excitement. I think the children certainly weren't used to seeing Westerners, and certainly weren't used to seeing Western teenagers. Of course, my children in the bottom right look like 2 kind of white giants who ghosted into town. But it was great fun, and they were delightful, and we had a wonderful time. And why does this matter? Well, because if I just give you the example of this little boy who was outside, really lovely boy. I'd love to have him at my school just to see what you could make of him, because he clearly had spark and he was bright. And Sarvesh said, look, why don't you go and get some more clothes? Because he got himself the one he's put over his shirt. He's got an Under Armour kind of golf shirt. And he said, because I love this one and this is all I want. He doesn't want any more. So it mattered that somebody somewhere gave their cast off. Maybe they'd outgrown it. Maybe they just wanted to give it to somebody. It made its way across to the jungle, and he took it, and that's all he wanted, and he was utterly delighted. So it mattered because it touched his heart, and it touched the heart of those people who were around on that day. And that's just one example of very many that we could give. So all of these are pro-social behaviors, and these are the kind of examples that I can give to the children in my school, so they really understand just how changing and life changing these kind of things can be. Comforting is another one which we talk to the children about. We use this illustration again, and we flip this illustration around because, you know, Scuffle and Twitch are the, if you like, the embodiment of what we want the children to be all about. Well, this time they are on the receiving end, because the truth of the matter is those amongst us who spend a lot of time helping others find it very easy to get help when we need it, because people want to give that back. It's a reciprocal arrangement, and this idea of helping and comforting is very important. So this helps the children, the young children that we teach, understand how this dynamic works. If I just extrapolate that a little bit to the IMHO work, IMHO have, with the help of Assist RR, funded 200 of these toilet blocks in around the poorest areas of the displaced peoples in the north and east. And that's, so again, put it in context of what the alternative is. The alternative is a couple of planks over a gully or a trench in a field dug at the back of somebody's dwelling. So, you know, the alternatives were bleak and grim. And why does this matter? Well, it really matters because the choices that you guys made to do this, here's what happens. Well, the alternative is, if you particularly think in terms of women, I think there's a third of the world's population don't have adequate toilet provision. And for women, it's a particularly difficult issue because they lack access to safe toilets. They're much more susceptible to urinary tract infections, a higher risk of infection and disease as a result of this. 20 to 25% of women of childbearing age are menstruating at any one time. And obviously in pregnancy, things become even more challenging again. So when you kind of lift the lid on the challenges and difficulties that people face, they face multiple problems on a multiple level on a daily basis. And this is where charities like IMHO and Assist RR do the work that, quite frankly, government and bigger agencies don't do. They can't move quickly enough. They're not dexterous enough. They can't get the help right to where it's needed as quickly as it is. And in that intervening time, people can become irreversibly ill or blind or sick, or as the previous speaker said, drop off the radar, never to be found again. And that's why I think one of the most energizing things about the work that we've done with the Assist RR and IMHO really brings to the front just how much difference you can make. So I would encourage you to keep on supporting, of course. Cooperating, well, here's probably the big ticket project that we've been involved in since the beginning. It's a coincidence that this is about Scuffle and Twitch and their friends building a raft together to get across to Acorn Island. Well, that's because we learned about a boat project. There's Dr. Rajam and Sean just left the center. We heard about the boat project because Sarvesh explained to me, and I thought that's a really interesting project in terms of livelihood because it seems to have such a big impact. So 5 families share one boat, and you give them the boat and the nets and the engine, and you set them free. And it does. It literally sets them free to earn a living. Well, this is me. This is pre-lockdown hairstyle. This is post-lockdown hairstyle, as you can see now. So this is me having a great time on the board when we went in Columbus, Ohio. And thank you again, Murley, for a wonderful weekend that was. But it was at that convention that we got a really wonderful help start from you guys. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. $19,000 was donated towards the first wave of that cause, and it went from there, really. Donna and I decided we would do a long walk because we wanted to sponsor some more boats. And we had a platform on the IMHO website. We also had a UK-based one, and that allowed the North American and the European diaspora to be able to contribute. So that was a really important thing. So we did receive funds from everywhere. Sarvesh, because this is what Sarvesh does, gives me more work even when I've already got plenty. So we had to go and do 2 Tamil television programs, and we did a radio program. That was interesting for me to have 2 Tamils and 1 Irishman in the studio to see who could speak fastest. And clearly, I think I won.
Log into PayPal already?
So this is a video, and so I'll stop talking for a bit, and you can just watch the video. When we did go on the walk in August, it was a hot day, and it was a long day, but we had a great time. So I'm going to show you. It's just about 3 minutes long.
Three, 2, 1, let's go!
Steep bit, Donna.
Not steep.
That's why Donna's shuffling. Little steps, little steps.
It's so steep.
It's so steep. Do it in style. Something like this guy. Just go like. He goes nuts. Max. Get back out there very soon. Girl. That's a pretty good effort. So we are rocking and rolling with a sock change. A bit of cloud in here, but obviously the sun is out. It's pretty hot. And the village of to get your neck, we have to go down this way first. That is the perfect.
I think we're on about 38 kilometres, aren't we?
Just to come across to our left is quite a lot of undulating hills, the sea in the background. Just past 48. So yeah, literally just past the 50k mark. Brighton Pier. Just past 50k and it's taking us right past Brighton Pier, so. So there, guys. So 71,000 steps, or a bit more than that, in one day. That was quite a thing. But we had great fun doing it, and we got a couple of medals, quite a few blisters. But most importantly of all, the IMHO total went above $40,000, and in the UK, £20,000, which astonished us because we never think we thought we would hope we would get enough for 2 or 3 boats, and as it happens, we ended up with a whole lot more. I think it's important that you guys understand. I think that the donations came in from the USA, Canada, UK, Ireland, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia. So if you're watching from those countries this evening or this morning, depending on where you are, thank you so much. It made an enormous difference. And I'd also would like to say to all of you guys, you know, a lot of this, quite a significant amount of this money came from non-Tamils. And I would say this is kind of a reflection of a non-Tamil. I would say to you guys, tell your people's story and the story of IMHO. You have so much to say. And I think if my experience of explaining a little bit about your history and about the difficulties that the Tamil people in the North and East have had historically, people are very receptive to that story and they want to help. They had no hesitation whatsoever, particularly when I explained to them how IMHO and Assist RR would make very, very good value from the donation that they gave, accountable value and rapid turnaround from the money that came in. So the money that came in here, that you can see the boats, I'm going to rush through some of these slides now because I don't want to overplay the program. But this is just some of the beneficiaries. You'll see there is some friends in ours who, and if they're watching tonight, thank you guys, who supported a boat from the US. We have friends in the UK. Thank you to you guys too. My family back in Ireland in the bottom right funded this boat. And here's us giving out and meeting some of the beneficiary families. Our school community, I think some people are watching tonight in the bottom left, you'll see that our school also sponsored a boat and paid for those. And we met all the families and had a wonderful time. It was so nice to see them. You can see the bottom right, my children became kind of minor celebrities and were asked for selfies everywhere they went. Again, into areas, I guess, they're just not used to seeing people like our family. But it was great, and we had a wonderful time meeting everybody. And this is why it's important. These are why the choices that you guys made, any of you who funded a boat in part or in whole, it makes a huge difference because the scenes like this are possible. And a very quick clip, this is less than a minute long. This is just going out on the boat with the families.
So they're making about 3,500 rupees per family per day. So 16, 17 quid, which is more than the teacher gets paid, and 10 times more than the work gets really when they just had the little rowboats. And that's ×5, so they're very, very happy.
He said they go out nearly 75 kilometers.
Really? They need extra petrol tanks. 75 kilometers offshore. That's 6 o'clock at night till 5 o'clock the next morning. But good income. They bought motorbikes, they bought furniture for the house, they bought things for the children to go to school. Yeah. Thank you to everybody who made it possible there. Very, very, very pleased and very happy.
So being able to see those projects from start to finish, from raising the funds to actually going out on the boat with the fisher families themselves, was something that we'll always cherish and remember. As I referred in the video just then, 10 times the previous income that they were having, self-sufficient, sustainable, and generating income locally in lots of different places. And their families are up and running, and hopefully will never, never have to look back. Huge thanks to all of you, because the 70,000 plus dollars that was generated across the globe funded all of these things, and that's 19 of the 45 boats in all that are 220 families that Assist Aurora and IMHO have, and I hope that we can do even more, because it's an incredibly transformative livelihood project. So let's see if we can do more of those. 2 quick references, guys. There's a couple of books I think I would like to recommend to many of you. The first one is The Bottom Billion by Paul Collier, and the books are really worth reading because they challenge the established way of thinking, I think. His well-touted quote that without an informed electorate, politicians will continue to use the bottom billion merely for photo opportunities rather than promoting real transformation. Well, I think in the case of Sri Lanka, it's even more problematic than that, because you have a very partisan electorate, and you have politicians, not all, but some, who actively block real transformation. So there are many of your people who are desperate for support, and there are very few agencies and charities, very few like your own and Assist Aurora, who can make that happen. So I can vouch for the fact that the donations that anyone might give tonight make an enormous difference. So this one challenges policymakers, if you like, and the policy legislators. This one challenges the person. This book by Peter Singer on the life that you can save really makes us think and challenge what it is that we can do. And I like the quote, the notion that we need to recognize that what really matters isn't buying more and more consumer goods, but family, friends, and knowing that we're doing something worthwhile with our lives. Every one of you are doing something worthwhile with your lives by even being here this evening. Helping reduce the appalling consequences of world poverty should be part of that reassessment. And I know that's something that's very much at the forefront of IMHO and Assist Aurora's mission. Well, here's just one last quote from me, and it's, I think, so what does it mean for us as individuals? And this is a quote I lifted from a book I read very recently from a Holocaust survivor, based on something this Jewish sage called Hillel said 2,000 years ago. And it's a call to arms on an individual basis, I guess, in the sense that if I do not do it, who else will do it? But if only I do it for me, then what am I? And if I do not do it now, then when will I do it? So I guess it's taking the notion that you might have some thoughts, but unless you act through on those thoughts and do something about it on an individual level, you're not going to get very far. And I will end with a quote that we just heard from Dr. Canton earlier, is this idea that when individually you then team together with groups like your own charities, because it is absolutely the case that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. And you are doing that, in my view. We've seen it up close to the family. And I just wanted to say enormous thanks to all of you for the engagements that we've had. And we look forward to many, many more indeed, because hopefully with Assist Aurora and IMHO at the forefront, you can continue to do great things, and we can support you with that. So thank you guys for listening. I hope that was of some interest to you as a non-Tamil who has a great affection for the Tamil people. And thank you for everything you've done for us as a family as well.